Hi, Pat.
Hi. I am pleased to be here talking to All Forge group, and we want to sort of delve into how we made the commemorative rug. So this is called traditional rug hooking, and I've got sort of a pile of the basics that you will need. You need a backing, and the backing that we use is either burlap, linen, cotton, or synthetic. You can buy this by the yard, as you can see. Um, and if you're using burlap, don't use the stuff that you wrap your trees in because it's pretty flimsy. And we want a nice uniform grid with the weaves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very neat. Yes.
What we use to hold it in is either a hoop or a frame. Now the frames are often square and elevated so you can work underneath, and it holds your backing in with gripper tape. So
yeah, it's that way it's held. You don't have to hold it with your hands.
You don't.
As much.
No.
Yeah.
No, that's an advantage. You will need not the gauzes, but a bunch of hooks. And the hooks vary with handles, as you can see here. This is called a pencil hook. The actual hooking part of it is like a crochet hook. And the size of the hook on the end varies depending on how thick a piece of wool you were pulling through the backing. So if it's very fine, you want a fine hook. And if it's wider, you'll want a larger hook.
Okay.
And you need a pair of scissors for trimming off ends, which we will get to later. I have a little page here, how to hook a rug. So to begin with, we want to prepare our backing. So maybe you've measured the area in your hallway or on your wall and you know how big you want it. So you will cut a piece of backing to allow at least 4 inches around all edges of your design so that when you're putting it into your hoop, so you'll be able to hook the edge of your pattern.
It'll hold the piece and you'll be able to hook the whole thing.
That's it.
Right.
Yes.
And
also, what we then take it and we zigzag around all the edges.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And this is to prevent it from raveling. As you can see here, it ravels pretty easily. And I've seen them ravel all the way back into the design. And then you're in big trouble.
No, you don't want that.
No. So you've got a nice piece of burlap ready to go. And you've drawn your design probably on paper. And now we have to get it from the paper transferred onto the burlap or the backing. So in these little pictures, I have a picture of a rose. And on top of this, I have applied what we call red dot. Now this material you can buy by the yard. The easiest place to get it is a rug hooking supplier. It used to be in quilting shops or fabric shops, but it's harder to get now. It's like that interlining, interfacing that we used to use. And the little dots are 1 inch apart, so it helps with your design for centering and,
making sure it's straight along the grain of the backing.
Exactly.
As well.
Exactly. So I cut a little piece for my design. Here it is. And I've traced, probably with a pen, but it's going to have to be pretty thick so you can make sure you can see it when you lay it on top of a piece of burlap or backing. Okay, then you take it over here and you put it on your backing and you pin it in place So now I use a Sharpie to transfer it. Don't use the colors because they do tend to bleed. So the black one is good. And I will do a little demonstration. There is nothing on the burlap. And now do it slowly so it has a chance for the ink to go through.
Penetrate.
Penetrate. There we go. And there it is.
And there it is, yeah.
The other thing I do, I'm really color mad, so I like to have control over the colors that I use and how they're distributed around the piece. So I do a little pencil crayon illustration of where my reds are going and trying to make, to balance the colors. So we're ready to go.
Yeah.
So now we have our design transferred onto the backing. Now we just have to hook it. What we use to hook is mainly wool. And wool is just a really hard-wearing, beautiful kind of lustrous material to use. Don't worry about the spots. This was done on purpose to add a little life to the color of the piece. But, yeah.
So it's wool fabric.
Wool fabric, or you can use yarn, which is, I'd use it sort of at least a semi-bulky kind of 3-ply wool. If it's really skinny, it just doesn't have the same effect. But with this kind of wool, we have to cut it into uniform width strips to hook through the backing. Now, we're not going to do that by hand because this is just too tedious. We have a little machine. So we will now go over here, and this is called the cutter. Yeah. Now, the cutter is made up of cutting wheels underneath, a pressure wheel, which pushes down on the blades, and a guide.
Okay.
This one is a bit unusual in that it has 2 cutting heads on it. Often there's only one.
Right.
Now, this is the wheel, and you can see the gap in between. This is called a number 8, and that means it is 8/32 of an inch wide.
Between the two sharpest parts of the blade, eh?
That's it. So they're attached underneath.
And then the ones you have on the cutter, there's 2 and they're different sizes as well.
They are different sizes. This one here is a 7, and this one is a 5.
Right.
So I will be cutting on a 5.
Right.
All right, now I've got my nice piece of wool, and here is the selvage edge. The threads running, if you cut in this direction, are going to be stronger than if you cut it across.
Okay.
And if you're a weaver, you know these are the ones that are under tension, and these are the ones that you weave in and out. So we want to cut parallel to the selvage edge. And you can probably see the selvage here.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't want to have a piece this wide flopping around. So you can take your scissors. You've probably seen them do this in the fabric shops. And you pull one back, one forward, and it rips right along that long thread.
Okay.
And it's perfectly straight. So now we can feed it through the machine. Let me do that one more time because I want to use the old fabric. There we go.
And it's important to have these strips cut straight because if they're not cut straight, they break, don't they?
They break and they're really ragged, and you're not going to get I should find a bad piece afterward.
Okay.
Okay, so I lay my hand flat on this to sort of feed it through, and you just,
And this is called a strip cutter. That's what they used to call these. Maybe they still do.
Yeah. Now you can see you've got beautifully even strips.
Right.
No ragged edges either, so that's really good. So how do we get these through? Well, I'm going to cheat and show you. This is not our regular backing, but this will show you what my hand is doing underneath here. You pinch your strip between your fingers.
Okay.
You get your hook, and the hook part should be on the top. You put this into close to the surface of your backing.
Underneath.
Make sure it's tight too. It does loosen up, so you have to do this now and then. Okay. And here we go. The hook is up, you push it through. Now you'll notice this shaft is wider as it gets toward the bevel, the handle, and that opens up the hole. And you pull it toward yourself and then up. Okay.
So the first one comes all the way out.
Yes. Now you've hooked the edge and bring it through, and now you're pulling it back. And I'll show you why we pull it back. Here's the next one. We pull it through, and if I pull it forward, it pulls the previous one out. So instead, I'll pull it back. Let's try a few more of those.
And how do you know how high to hook?
Well, the rule of thumb is that you hook it as high as it is wide. This is a little higher than that, but you want it at least that high so that it blooms. Let's look at one that is really low down. There, it's through. But it's not as luscious looking as this.
Yeah, I guess it might pull out more easily too, eh?
Very easily, yes. So
that's the interesting thing, is how they stay in place. How does this work?
Well, the trick is when you do the loop, pull the loop through, you've got, see, there's my loop, and you've got that thickness of the wool, if you see those two side by side,
right. Mm-hmm.
in that little hole.
In that little hole, right.
And since they're crammed in there, they're not going to come out.
Oh, okay.
But if you just had one piece, it could easily slip out. So I'll show you what you have to do with this
when we get there.
In a moment. Yeah. Okay. Now you'll see me hooking toward myself, which is the easiest way to hook. But you can hook in other directions. This is great if you got a square, but let's say you want to go around a corner. You can see you can hook in another direction. In this case,
this screen is not as easy to hook in as a regular
Thank you, Nora. No, it isn't as easy. All right. You pull that one through. Yep.
And the aim is to have all your loops the same height.
Yes.
Although it's a little hard right now because
yeah.
she's being filmed.
Okay, let me turn this just to prove that you could go in a circle if you really wanted to.
And you may want to. Yeah, this is not as easy on the screen.
Thank you for making excuses here. That's good. There we go.
Okay, so you've made a curve,
I've made a curve.
kind of like a J.
So if I finished there, I would then bring the rest of this out. Now, you don't want to, say I want to do, add another color to this. I've got a tail here. Let me look at this one this way. I want to hook brown next to that orange. So I've only got one end in this hole, so let's put another end. So I'll put another tail in there. Now we've got the two pieces of wool in there, so they won't pull out. And now I can just hook along.
And do you hook in every hole?
No, you don't have to. You want to hook it high enough that it blooms, but if it starts, the loop starts overshadowing the previous hole, you'll skip one and go to the next. So they should be friendly, not fighting, is the term that I was told. Okay, now if we finish this, we have two ends here. We get our scissors, we lay them on top of the loops, flat and cut, and now they'll all be the same height.
Right.
Okay?
And you just leave it like that.
And you leave it like that. The rule of thumb is you would hook the maybe outer border first, say it was a square, and do a couple rows, and that will hold the shape of your design. Then you outline each of your little motifs, and then you fill them in.
Outline with the hooked wool.
That's correct.
You hook an outline kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Sometimes when we're coloring, I remember I always did a dark line around the outer edge and then colored in a lighter tone. So, yeah.
It's a bit like coloring.
Yes. So let's look at a real piece. Here we go. This you may recognize as the lady drinking tea in the lower left-hand corner of the commemorative rug.
Right.
She's a little different. The table's smaller.
Yeah. Cute.
So what I did here is I am going to hook the outline of the rug. So you bring this to the top, and this is, oh, so much easier.
Oh.
Yes. So now we can make speed.
And you can see how wide that piece, that strip is, because it's almost covering the thick line you made before.
It's true. It must be 5/32 of an inch wide. Okay, so I keep going and outline the whole thing. The order of hooking, the best thing I find, is to do what is closer to you first. So I'd hook the little bench before I hook the rug underneath it, because then you know where you're standing. And
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So other than that, where are we at? Yes. Okay.
You were going to talk a bit about finishing?
Finishing.
Yeah.
Yes. I'll bring this one over. This was the design.
Okay, I can come over instead. Yeah.
Okay. And this was the hooked piece.
Wow.
Then when it is finished, you can fold over the remaining backing. You can zigzag again the edge of this back at the edge.
So
here.
like, remember this was zigzagged here.
Yes, and we would zigzag it again.
Zigzag it again.
And then fold it over. And then we were going to whip the edge of the backing that you can see from the design.
Right.
So in this case, I folded it over and I whipped it with yarn just around the edge.
So basically going in and round and in and around, in and around, all the way around.
Into every hole.
Into every hole.
Yes.
And right up against the hooking.
Yes, as you can see.
You can hardly see it at
I
all.
think there might be one hole in between, but
Okay.
or right into the next hole is ideal.
Yeah.
And then you can see that you don't see any of the backing on the front.
Yeah, and it makes a nice little kind of frame. It could either go on the wall or on the floor, right?
Exactly. Just as a final, put a little square on the back with your name, the designer, and the year you either started or finished.
Mm-hmm.
I don't often put both because there's sometimes a gap.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be fancy, but
No.
it's a great record, isn't it?
It is, and when your ancestors look at your piece, they're going to say, I wonder when she made that.
You mean your descendants, I guess.
Descendants, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's basically it, and we'll accept a few questions now.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll pass back to the moderator.
Okay.
Okay.